I would like to hear from you what you think has been the overall, in a very succinct way, how have I been helpful to you and Sabina?
Okay, so maybe I start in 2008.
Good.
Is that fine? So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I still remember I met David Sorrento. He was my coach in San Francisco. We were sitting in the San Francisco office with a view of the Golden Gate and the Bay Bridge, and I asked him about potential, integrative doctor, whether he would know one, because we had been hitting the wall with the conventional approaches in Germany and in other places. And he said, "Oh yeah, there is Dr. Jaffe. He is one of the best known, well-known people in the US. So I'll put you in touch with him." And that's the way we got in touch. We met in Munich the first time, and I mean, I think our pathways were really exhausted. We had been to traditional medical doctors. We had seen alternative practitioners who not always knew what they were doing. And so despite the test and trying, we didn't get the results to sustainably improve health and well-being. I think rather the opposite. I think we were on a downward trajectory, on a downward slope. And I think you have done a whole host of different things for us. I think there is an educational piece to it, and we can go a little bit deeper. But there's also the piece, basically evidence-based recommendations to it. And then I think lifestyle support on the way. And so I mean, we learned about things we hadn't been fully aware of. I mean, we've been eating organic food for years before we saw you. I've been doing some practices for body and soul, but there was more to it, right? I mean, there's the whole xenotoxic effects of where you live. Air quality is indoors often worse than it's outdoors. That your immune system is inhibited by delayed allergies. I knew about allergies, but didn't know about delayed allergies. So there were a whole lot of things where he really educated us in the way we need to think about living in the 21st century, which isn't that trivial. Um, and so, I think we understood the challenges better, what it means to live there, and also how to tackle some of those challenges in order to become a little bit healthier at least. And so I think that was the educational part. And then obviously, you helped us, you guided us with a lot of tests in the beginning to do the right set of tests, because you can, normal doctor throw tests at you, but when those tests show bad results, you are basically close to being dead. That's what I
Yeah.
that's what I remember, because
Yes.
if your liver parameters are really bad, you have a problem. It's not predictive.
It's
It's
not, you're right. It's not proactive. It's not personalized. It
exactly.
puts you into a statistic and we compare you to some statistical range, which it turns out you may not be a member of that group. But you're right. I start with information and inspiration.
Yes, it's a fact-based, it's evidence-based, and then it's personalized.
Exactly. And therefore, in the beginning, we very often do have to do tests to find out where the important issues are and to exclude certain things, which is helpful, but more importantly, include a very up close and personal approach. And I really appreciate what you just said because I feel I'm well trained. Now, I've
Absolutely.
had to retrain myself to communicate, to inspire, to inform, to be able to say what this test means in relation to what else. And I think this is the medicine of the future.
Yeah, but it's I mean, I fully agree. And what I appreciate about your approach is that it is really truly 360 and not 20
Yeah.
degrees, right? Because if you go to normal doctor, they are functional. specialists, so they can go very deep, but they are missing the T. It's like, they don't have the oversight, so they don't know what this means in relation to some other things. And I think not just that, but they are only trained in, very often they're just traditional medicine. So if I have a broken leg, I appreciate if I have a specialist, or when it's been a hip replacement, I appreciate there is somebody who knows how to mechanical do it, even so they don't understand other things. And we can come to that in a minute, because I think that's a great example. And let's go there. I mean, that's a great example. When Sabine had the hip surgery, and she had the first hip surgery, and they gave her heparin, anticoagulation, and that basically influenced her gut in such a negative way that she had bloody stools, and this went on forever and forever. And when we had the second surgery, people still said, "Oh, you need to take anticoagulation." And based on your advice, it took a while. We found a lab that did the tests you said were predictive of whether Sabine would be in danger after surgery of a thrombosis. And
Thrombosis.
interestingly, she was miles away from it. She was exactly on the other side. And we said, no anticoagulation. They were staring at us. In the end, they didn't understand it. But I said, okay, this is where I said, we're not going to go down that pathway again. We have been there. We learned it. It's not been good to us. I think that's an example of where I think, given your education, your knowledge, you're been around for 50 plus years in that. So there's the practice factor to it, because experience is important. Experience compared with smartness is hard to beat. Yeah, it is. It's just a fact of life. And I think also your broader education with with Banti, Chinese medicine, traditional medicine, plant-based medicine. So I think this is something where you can bring you added a lot of value to our living, and I think that's where you're quite unique, and and that is very hard to find these days.
Harder and harder. And just what you said, some people are way smart about a narrow area, but they don't have the perspective. I was curious, and therefore I got cross-trained. I think today you have to be cross-trained if you're going to really help people thrive, not just survive. And I do feel that it's, on the one hand, I appreciate what you just said about me being special. My mother appreciates that in heaven. I feel at this point in time, after all this time, and with all my experience, that I should have some proteges. I should have some people that I mentor who can then go out and change the world. Because, as you well know, you're not the only people that were in the situation you were in.
No.
We had real challenges finding physicians who understood what I was saying.
We're still having that?
No, this is an ongoing issue. On the one hand, we have our PIH Academy, we certify doctors, we do what little we can to show that the upstream primary prevention is way more powerful, more opportune, more effective than the symptom reactive care that dominates today. And it dominates because of reimbursement.
Yep.
So from my point of view, we have to revise the entire education process of the doctor so that their minds are more open, not more closed. And there are a number of studies that have shown that medical school impairs your ability to be compassionate, understanding, and have a broad perspective. And it increases your ability to be focused on a very narrow area.
Yeah, I think or not a mistake, but the big misunderstanding is, or the belief is, the body is it's a agglomeration of functional units, which it is not. It's a system. So you can read about system theory in companies, in computers, and so on and so forth. And you will find that everything is integrated, is communicating with each other. There's there and but people don't get this. They don't get it. I mean, it's lost. There was the good old house doctor
Yeah,
50 or 60 years ago. He
yeah,
was holistic. He
yeah.
was
When I was in training, there were many fine mentor physicians who would take us aside and say, yes, it's important to understand the tests and what tests to do and how to interpret them, but it's much more important how to communicate and how to be understanding of the whole person. Whole person medicine has been lost. And just for the reason you said, it's the Descartesian mistake that the body is just a big watch that we can take apart and put back together. And it is not, as you correctly said. It is a system. It is integrated. Everything is related to everything. But at a moment in time, some issues deserve to be attended to in a proactive way, predictive way, evidence-based way, and not throw darts, which unfortunately many doctors are limited enough that in essence, they only have a hammer, so every problem is a nail.
correct. Correct. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, you know.
Well, let's unpack this just a little bit.
Sure.
You said correctly, you're very careful about your diet, digestion, microbiome, the ability to digest, assimilate, and eliminate foods, to stay well hydrated. You're working on all of those. And you still have some issues that I think start in the stomach and continue throughout
Yes.
digestive tract. And these are correctable issues, but it takes time. It takes
Yeah.
tincture of time. And I believe that I have gained your confidence to the point where you will say to me, do I have to do this forever in order to see any benefit? Do I have to do this for 3 months? If I do things together, will it be synergistically beneficial? Will there be other things that might interfere? And I think both of you are good examples of people who deserve to thrive. They're not yet at that high level wellness
Mhm.
thriving state, but deserve to. And you are doing what you know to do.
Yeah.
And it is somewhat like peeling an onion. Issues come up and we address them.
No, that's right. I mean, that I think also the important part that it is it is a it's there's a constant feedback loop involved here. So when we say, we do some tests, we try some things out, we need to adapt what we can tolerate to our, with regard to our system. And so that needs to be adapted. We need to do some, with the hormones. We check every couple of months. You look at it, you say, okay, what the endocrine, whatever, the hormone doctor
Right.
has a hard time interpreting things.
Right.
But then you look at the profile and say, a little bit less stress, some improvements here, oxidative capacity is getting better. So there's some progress. I wouldn't see the progress, but you see the progress. So I think that's reassuring, and also we can fine tune things. So I think that's a very important feedback loop that we over the years have built into the collaboration here, and that's extremely important because you know a little bit. It's a long journey. I mean, it's now 17 years, so it's not like it's like this. So it's been a long journey, and you need to have check-in points, but you also need to make sure that you are on a trajectory and not on a downward slope.
Exactly right. And
Yeah.
it helps to have deep experience with the clinical meaning of patterns,
Yeah.
not any one individual chemical or hormone or neurotransmitter or hormone or cytokine or interleukin, but I've grown up with these in parallel to my cross training.
Yeah.
And it helps. First of all, the fact that you have been so willing to work with me over these years encourages me. The benefits that you have found, observed, documented, still leave life issues.
Yes.
Of course, that's called life. And as you correctly said, it's a system, it's interconnected, and we have to be appropriate in the moment to understand what to measure and how to interpret it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So,
So let's talk for a minute about when you say you're very careful about your diet. I think that means you don't add sweeteners, you try to avoid edible oils, you try to avoid grains, you try to have a wide variety of whole.
edible oils, I still eat kind of a tablespoon of olive oil per day because my weight was kind of crashing and I'm still trying to.
That's true. So the one virtue of oils is they are calorie dense.
Yeah, and it's Demeter olive oil, so it's not
Yes.
just.
Aha. Now that's what I wanted you to say. The biodynamic certification has meaning.
Yes,
Words like organic and natural may not have much
yes.
meaning except as a marketing gimmick, but you have been willing to go to get quality sources.
Whenever I can get biodynamic, I get biodynamic. In Germany, you have different levels of biological food certification. You have the lowest level, which is kind of maybe comparable to USDA organic.
Right.
And then you have two other levels. They're called bioland and natural land, and then you have Demeter.
Right.
So those two others are also they're not fully Demeter, but they're closer to Demeter than they are to the basic, e.g. European group dynamic organic.
No, that's exactly correct. Biodynamic pays attention to the quality of the soil, to the quality of the water, to the quality of the air where you're growing the food.
Yes.
That goes back to Pfeiffer, who was a student of Steiner. Rudolf Steiner was a really remarkable guy worth studying even today, decades later. Unfortunately, some of that community has just stopped learning once he passed. But there is meaning to that certification, and biodynamic is way better than organic. And yes, Europe is ahead. Europe is more often using the cautionary principle to anticipate problems.
Yeah.
But for example, the soil might have residues from before. Here in the United States, we have long been taking the nitrogenous waste from the water treatment plants and using it in organic gardens. And the problem with that is it has too much aluminum, too much toxic metal, and now it's being found to have microplastic and all sorts of other disruptive chemicals. And some of that we do get exposed to in the 21st century.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we can reduce the harm, we can increase the quality of what we're fueling our bodies with. And yes, if you get that quality of olive oil and you take a tablespoon a day or so, you'll get plenty of calories.
Yeah, but I need them.
When look, I want you to be at your lean weight. I don't want you to be too lean. I don't want you to be too heavy. I think it's almost always the Goldilocks scenario that just right is just right. And you need to adjust the number of seeds and nuts, the number of high nutrient density, but high oil, high calorie foods, including some herbs and spices, which make the food more interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. Sometimes I do almond oil or avocado oil, but very rare. But I think,
I would increasingly taper that.
yeah, yeah,
I would stick with the olive oil.
yeah, yeah. That's what I try to do. Grains once in a while, a little bit of oat, but then it's really it's gluten free, so that it's
Well,
easier. I know where you're coming from, but it's
yes. Now, it's wheat gluten free, but all grains have glutens, and glutens are hard to digest. That's why we say lots of grasses in a wide variety of ways, lots of fruits, vegetables, melons, lots of
yes,
sea vegetables and nuts and seeds. And that should make up the bulk of your diet.
yeah, that's what I do. And then I mean with the quinoa, I think is fine. Millet is, and my understanding is fine. Buckwheat as
Buckwheat
well.
is fine. Yep.
Yeah, and that's quite nicely tolerated. Amaranth, very little. It's too heavy for me. I don't. It's
Okay.
a little, yeah,
No,
but
personal preference is included in the selection.
yeah, yeah,
There's a grain called fonio, which is a traditional millet from Africa. There are a wide variety of what we call grasses. I think we have sent you our recommendations for how to have a wide variety of foods in a
yeah,
wide variety of ways that improve your digestion and microbiome, that improve your stomach, intestinal, and colon function. And we now have tests. We have self-tests. Digestive transit is a fairly easy test to
yeah.
do, and it gives you a global measure of the quality of your digestion. And if you're a typical American, it's 3 to 7 days from the time you eat until you poop.
I
And
don't think that's my typical time. I
I,
think it's more like
given where we started, I think you've made remarkable progress. And we've reversed the negative trend, but we're still working on the positive.
momentum. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true. That is true. Yeah.
It takes tincture of time and some intelligent synthesis of personalized programs, personalized protocols, personalized. Um, I do a lot of thinking so that I can communicate a little bit to you and to Sabine.
Yeah.
And in her case, she is sensitive. So we must, and we do, adjust what we recommend to her based on her feedback to us.
Yeah.
You can react out of fear. I don't think she is, but you can
No.
react to say, I'm sensitive. And you pointed out correctly that for her, heparin is contraindicated. And as you know, I was a coagulationist before I became whatever I am now. So I really do understand the issue for, specifically of heparin. When I was working with Dan Dakin on the mechanism of collagen activation of platelets, there was an equally brilliant guy next door who was working on heparin. And he identified 6 different subtypes of heparin, all of
Hmm.
which have nothing to do with anticoagulation, but are protective of the heart.
Interesting.
Fascinating. And why hasn't that work continued? It dropped out of vogue because we treat people statistically, mechanistically,
Hmm.
and not personally.
Yeah.
We all deserve better.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Now,
That,
how about hydration? How do you keep yourself hydrated?
well, I drink plenty of glass bottled water from a excellent source. So that's what I mean. I start in the morning when before I walk the dog, I take my hormones with a glass of warm water. Then I take some orca. I have another glass when I come back, so I already have half a liter or 0.6 liters in before I even go to the shower. Then I come down, then I take my digestive aid with some warm water, then I have some white silver needle tea. If I have an espresso, I have another glass of water. So I drink throughout the day. I drink kind of 2.5, 3 liters of water every day. And and I have smoothies where you have a lot of fruit in there, so that adds to the supply of liquids as well. If you do, if I put salads in there, if I put fruits in there, and so on and so forth, a lot of that is 80 to 90% water. So it's
Eat wet.
yes. So
So
what most of us do.
yes, you don't need to be perfect. You do need to have certain amount of self-discipline, and certain issues are more important. I think for you, hydration is a very important issue. And for some period of time before we met, you were probably a little bit dry.
I was always drinking a lot of water, but I don't know. When
Well,
I,
if you were peeing every 2 hours, that's the sign of good hydration. Today, I would imagine you urinate every couple of hours.
I do. Unfortunately, yeah, I do.
No,
Absolutely.
that's not unfortunate. That's how you get some toxins out of the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And the unfortunate part, it sometimes happens at night as well, which is
Yeah.
another issue, which we
Well,
know
no,
about.
that's another issue. In the evening, you should slow down on how much fluid
Yeah.
you're consuming.
Yeah.
Um, if a guy gets up twice a night to pee, that's okay. If you get up 4 times or more to
No, it's
pee,
max twice, but it's kind of disruptive. If I can limit it to one time, it would be better, or zero. So,
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Um, I think what you said in the beginning, the information and inspiration was very important to help motivate you to follow through on suggestions that I was making. Yes, based on tests and evidence, based on interpretation and experience. Um, but the most important thing is you were willing to understand and take action.
yeah. I mean, if you're convinced, you're convinced, and you convinced me early on, and the progress shows over time. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, to reverse whatever decades.
Yes, yes. So it takes sometimes years to reverse the previous decades.
Yes.
And that is an important lesson that at any given moment, you should be grateful for the progress you're making. You should appreciate that you're doing the best you can in the circumstances. And yes, we can always do a little better, but we should take heart. We should take body and brain functions as improving over time,
Yeah.
not slipping, not losing over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is an abundance of evidence if you're willing to take a look. Unfortunately, most professionals are so busy being busy and so busy trying to figure out what the regulations are for which they will get paid that they have very little capacity left for intellectual curiosity.
It's true.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, there is a better way. We've tried to articulate it at a policy level, at a personal level, at a practice level. And what I find is that the individuals like yourselves who are willing to follow the guidance and benefit from it, they are different going forward. Their lives are better and more integrated going forward.
Yeah. I think that's well said. Yeah. We consider ourselves being extremely lucky that we had the ability, or that we were given the chance to meet you, that you have been a friend, a doctor, throughout the years, guiding us, providing us help, being sometimes also available in kind of emergency situations. And if the emergency situation is only in your brain, but I think in the end it's an emergency situation for the person you are, if you're in and you feel it, everything happens, and your flight and fight responses come in, and then it's an emergency situation, and you have been, very, very, very helpful in some of those. And the only thing I can say, thank you very much, Russ. I mean, this has been a true pleasure and an honor that we were able to to meet you and to been helped by you over the last 15 years, 17 years.
17, and we're just getting started.
Yes. Yes,
So,
I hope so. I hope so too.
reciprocally, thank you, thank you.
No, my pleasure, Russ.